Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today isn't a chat like some of the chats are. Waffle. We're actually going to look at some orchids and chat about them. So it kills two birds with one stone. I've been meaning to do an update on the Holey clay pots for a while. I haven't got round to it. And I can include that as part of Sunday's chat. And the idea will be, is it easier to hold the plant with two hands in front of the camera, or is it easier to hold the camera? I think it's easier to pick up each plant and bring it to here. So what I'll do is I'll get out some and then we'll do those one at a time. I'll turn the camera off, put those away and get some more out. There's only about, I think there's 16 or 17 Holey clay pots all in all. And I think, yes, they are all Cattleya Alliance except for one, which is quite handy to get at, which is the relatively new Cattleya that I bought. It's a primary cross. It's Eximium crossed with Rhodostictum. Blooms are finished on it now, and it's growing quite nicely. The new growths don't show that much because the plant is large, but I think that this is probably the largest new growth coming up through here, and there's another one the same size around the back here where I am. So that's two quite large new growths off to that side of the plant, and then on this side of the plant there's 1, 2, 3, and a wealth of new roots. So we've got 5 new growths at the moment, I think. Yeah, 5 new growths, nicely spread around the base, and good root growth heading down into the pot. I don't see them coming out the holes yet, but it hasn't been in this pot long, don't forget. And this pot isn't what it seems. First of all, it's a small pot, which for a plant that size you might have thought was the wrong choice. There's a good reason for this. My Cattleya's have been lost, or virtually lost, as a consequence of staying wet in the cold winter. They shouldn't get as cold as they do in here. And the only reason they can survive is that they're dry, or virtually dry, all the time. Which, the way I had them potted, meant that they, when I watered them and gave them a trickle, they stayed wet for ages and the roots rotted. So that didn't do them a lot of good. So this pot has got a large rock in it. So in fact, there's only about that much media in there. Very, very little. It's small bark, so that this time of year when it's growing, it does stay moist for a while. But come winter time, with a clay pot and a rock and very little media, I'll be able to water that and not worry about it drying, because it will. So that's coming on. Cattleya types bloom out the top of the cane first time round, but they are capable of pushing out additional spikes either from the top of the cane or from down the sides on some of them, not all of them. Some of them will only bloom out of the apex, but some bloom from lower down as well. This may well be one of those that only blooms out of the apex, because I've only just noticed all of the canes, without exception, only have 2 leaves. Oh no, typical, just as I say it, I have seen a couple with 3. I was just going to say, because without a 3rd or 4th leaf, there isn't a leaf joint for a node to appear. Anyway, we may get some more blooms on that this year, we may not. But all I'm interested in is that those new growths are going to push on nicely. Right, so these I can get one at a time. I'll put them back later. This is a species, this is Leopoldii, endearingly known as a typical tatty bifoliate of species variety, because a lot of them look like this. Long spindly canes, no substance to them at all, and the leaves are miles away from the plant, and the pseudobulbs come out at all angles. And because of that, if you're not very careful, you break the 2 leaves off of the latest growth. But it hasn't stopped the buds growing. Strange shaped buds, because the end of the lip pokes through the buds. Anyway, that one's progressing. The fact that this is this type of species, this type of bifoliate, it will bloom at some point down the line. The new roots will come out, but there's not a sign of them yet, there's just a swelling. And they may not start until those blooms are finished. And then the roots and subsequent new growth will come out. but it's coming on. You know, at least it's going to bloom. I didn't lose the blooms. And this is the one with a rather long name. This one's got scale as well. I've got to get onto these. It's not much, but it's there. I'm aware of it. Now this is the one with the long name. Shin Fong, Little Sun, Young Min, Golden, Down in the Pot Boy. Really long name. And this one, I think, has got more than one lead on it. Let me have a look. Yeah, we've got a new growth here, just starting, and then we've got another one round here pushing on. So we've got a couple of leads on that one. So it's going to be a while before that blooms again. You know, obviously those have got to mature. Another bifoliate, but a compact one. Nice compact plant, and beautiful coloured blooms on that one. So that's that. This is, still think this is struggling. It's not growing as well as it should be. This is the Encyclia cordigera, Siang Yu. And it's growing. I mean, we do have new growths coming out, several, but they don't seem to be vigorous, but it's growing. That's all I can say, is there's a new growth there, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a tiny little one that's coming out from down underground somewhere or other. So we've got some new growths on here. Just, I don't know, there's just something about this that doesn't seem right, but it's got new growths, so it stands a chance. Without the new growths, it doesn't. Right, now this one is my nice red one, which also has a very long name from what I read. This is the one I broke the new growth off. We'll have a look into that. Siang Yu, got a feeling we might have heard that name, or we'll hear it again. Red Pearl, Red Dragonfly. It's red. Now, the new growth was there, and I broke it off. And right underneath it is the next new growth. So it's already pushing out a new growth. I am surprised because it's come out from virtually the same place. I was expecting it to try and poke out somewhere else. I'd love to get a second lead on this one. Nonetheless, this is an upright, tall, but upright Cattleya. Monofoliate, this one, although it has got one cane with 2 leaves on. So it's a make your mind up time. Anyway, it is growing a new growth. So despite losing a new growth, it's going to recover that quite quickly. That's probably only about 4 or 5 weeks behind when I broke that off, and it's pushing another one out already. Right, this is a relatively new one, another species. And this, I've got a feeling this was a gift. It's a Laelia, which is now Cattleya, I suspect. Not all the Laelias got pushed into Cattleya. Some of them went in different directions, I think, but I think there are still some genuine Laelias. So out the corner of my eye, I've got one of the Osprey nest cams on. The one that we made quite a big deal of a while ago because they lost their feed, they lost all their views and everything, and I asked people to go over that one, Diffie. Only 2 chicks because 1 egg didn't hatch, and the second chick is about to fledge. There's lots of jumping up in the air and flapping going on, so it's about to take off, I think, and catch the wind. Yes, so this is Tenebrosa aurea, and it has grown a new growth with some spots on the leaves for whatever reason, and it's now growing yet another new growth, and it has 2 leads because this is also a new growth out here. So it's got a new lead coming out here, another one coming out here, the new growth starting, and some root activity going on down in the pot. So that was put in a giant pot for a relatively small plant because it grows big. So that was allowing for expansion on that one. And we'll do one more off of this shelf, and then I'll turn the camera off and put these away and start on another shelf. Now this thing is this is just a no ID Cattleya. This is the bright orange one. And I think this is the one where we hacked the rhizome and cut through the rhizome. Yes, I believe so. and as a consequence we got a new lead. So what we've got is a lead over here that's pushing on nicely. The leaf is opening on that one, and then we've got another lead over here hanging out the side of the pot. It was debatable whether this should come out of its pot and be moved this time round or next time round, and I decided on next time round because one of the new leads is definitely going to get its roots down in the pot when it decides to grow some, and this one won't. Basically, the new roots on here will come out the side of the pot, but not to worry. There's an absolute pot full of roots, and it's quite an extensive root system, and it grows quite quickly. So you know, a disturbance on this one won't be too bad. It'll recover quite quickly. Right, so that's that shelf. I'll put those away and get some more out. This works quite well one at a time. Right, next shelf then, some of the bigger stuff. This is the Ivanagara apple blossom. That has not long had its rhizome cut because I was determined to get a second lead off of this thing. So this is what I call the normal growth. Its direction of growth has always been across here, and so this is the latest lead basically. But where we cut the rhizome, it has shot out already. So there is now a second lead. So we have the opportunity now of, given that this lead is behind the other one, a nice succession of blooms. So we get one spike, and probably not long after it's finished, or possibly before it finishes, another spike will come out. So 2 leads on that one at last. So this cutting the rhizome does work, but sometimes it can take an incredibly long time before anything happens. That one was quick. That was quite good. A nice little compact one here. This is the little lemon drops with crossed with Cattleya why not? The very, very popular bloom on this one. This one is shooting out in 2 directions at the moment. It's got quite a nice progressing new growth here, pushing on quite nicely. And it's also started another one here. So we've got 2 new growths on this one, pushing on. We've also got scale again. Not too bad, but they're around the base of the plant, the most awkward place to try and get rid of them, because the systemic doesn't seem to work so well down at the base of the plant. It works better on leaves. Anyway, 2 new growths pushing on, one quite advanced and the other one coming on behind. Now this is a relatively new one. It's not quite a year old, well, with me. This was got at the Welsh show last year, which has now been cancelled. It was the last hope of getting a show this year, and very recently it's been cancelled. So that was it. That was my only hope of getting to a reasonable show. But I got this off Speciotic Plants when I met them in person last year at the Welsh show. And it's a nice plant, has a very substantial bloom, and it currently has 1, 2, 3, 4 new growths, 3 of which have already got their sheaths. So this is pushing on at a rate of knots. It's also pushed out quite a substantial root system. It had a root system, I won't say it was brilliant, but it wasn't bad. So we've got 3 new growths with sheaths and a 4th one pushing on that will probably have a sheath too. Very, very substantial blooms on that. Very nice. Well, that's why I got it. What have we got here? This is a recent purchase. Right, more coffee, that's it. My mouth won't work. Trying to get this done earlier on Sunday today because I've got other things I want to do this afternoon. You might think it's boxing up that this pretend Victoria Regina to post back, but I can't. The guy contacted me and he's quite happy to send me a returns label and give me a refund when it gets back to him, but he's away this coming week, so nothing can happen. So it's on hold. Otherwise I'd have probably been boxing that up today, but I'm not. Right, so this is Rechara. I'll get there in a minute. It's 2 C's and an H is just not a common combination of letters as far as my mouth's concerned. Anyway, Francis Fox, that's the important bit. This had the new growths on it when I got it, but what those new growths are now doing, if I tip the pot up, is chucking out roots like they're going out of fashion. So a mass of new roots coming out now. Again, not all Cattleyas push their new roots out when the new growths are young. I mean, these new growths are forming their leaves now at the point the roots come out, but they're not fully mature. Some actually wait until they're fully mature before you see any flipping roots. And some of them even have a wait after that. So what we've got there is 2 nice new growths pushing on and developing their leaves. And I've since found out that some people say this is not very easy to get to bloom. Don't start. Don't you start. We don't have any of these non-bloomers anymore. This is Laelia anceps, and the 2 new growths on here. Do you know, I was hoping for 3. It nearly did 3. And it still might one day. It has a peculiarity on one of the leads. Now, over this side, the lead is behaving quite normally and is progressing quite nicely. The leaf is just starting to part, it's just starting to open. So that's one, that's progressing nicely. The one over the other side is progressing even nicer and is even bigger. And it did its normal thing and came out in the normal place, but inside there is an embryo new growth that seems to me as though it's starting to get bigger. But more importantly is the other side of this growth, which this one came out of, is also an eye that appears to be getting bigger. Now that might not do anything this year, but it might next year, and so might that. So over in this area here, there is the potential for another growth to start, as opposed to once this one's bloomed and the next progression of annual growth. There could be one starting in between, but no sign of one over this side. So we've got 2 new growths on there. That will be 2 spikes again, now that it's got its bright light back. We made a mistake with that one year and we lost the blooming. It was deemed that Laelia anceps is a cooler grower, so I put it down much lower, down here where it gets the cool air, and down there it lost its light. It is deemed the light is far more important than the temperature, so it went a whole year with no blooms. I lost them. I won't be doing that again. It's back up in the light now. Now this is Laelia purpurata, variety Atropurpurea, which we finally got to bloom. It's strange in the difference. The 2 leads on here, this one produced a nice sheath, but it didn't bloom. This one over here produced a nice sheath and it did bloom. And the sheath has completely died back. And yet the sheath that didn't bloom is still partially green. Now this is doing its normal thing after blooming, or after the growth matures, because in previous years there were no blooms. That last time was its first blooms. And then it does nothing. And it does nothing for a fair while before the next new growths start. And on this one, I think the new growths and the new roots come together. In fact, if you look, you might not be able to see this because it is just starting. At the base of this growth with the sheath that didn't bloom, right at the very base, is the first signs of the new growth and the new roots starting together on this one. Yeah, and on this side, the one that bloomed, we've got the great big fat new growth starting already, and the root tips are starting as well. So yeah, the new roots seem to come out roughly the same time as the new growths, which is unusual. As long as they happen, I don't really mind when. And the last one on this shelf is a biggie. This is a biggie as well. This one had the rhizome hacked and responded rather nicely, because What we got on this one is round the back of the plant, we've got a growth here. So we've got one round the back, and then we've got one coming out the side here that's progressing. I think that's the farthest advanced at the moment. And then coming around here we've got another one. This is the smallest so far. And then right round here we have yet another one that's pushing on nicely. So we do have 4 new growths on here, whereas we only ever had 2 directions of growth before. So we've doubled it. By cutting the rhizome, we've doubled the number of leads. The base of that's got scale on it as well. Always have a look with Cattleyas. If you think you've got scale, or mealybugs or anything else, come to think of it, hold your plant up and look upwards, and you'll be able to see the underside of all the leaves, which is not so easy when the plant's like this down here, because you're starting to turn the leaves over. Get it up in the air and look, and then you'll see. And I mean, I'm quite happy. This plant has got some scale. They're round the base. They're not attacking any new growth. They're well advanced. They're not on any of the leaves, so they're not a serious problem yet. I did say yet. They will get dealt with, but not today. Right, I'll get those away, and then there's just a couple more that I've got to move a lot of plants to be able to get at, so I'll be back shortly. Okay, just the last few to get. Oh. This one's getting awkward to manoeuvre now, mainly because of that chrysotoxin. It catches on everything because it's such a stiff plant. Right, this is another unwieldy looking thing. Again, Cattleya species. This is Harrisonii, or Harrisoniana. I'll get there in a minute. Again, one of these long spindly bifoliates. It's got some very tatty leaves on it from old. Latest growth, leaves are okay, and we've got 4 buds hopefully to come in the not too distant future. And yeah, this is producing new roots casually, not a mass, and it still has yet to push out a mass of new roots from the bottom of its new growth, but it is producing some. Seems to be a casual root producer, this one. There's nothing done at speed on this plant at all. One growth, takes a year, blooms the same time each year. It's going to take a while to get into a really big mature plant, but you can see that this latest growth is quite a bit more substantial than the previous one, which we did get to bloom. So at that point it was a first time bloomer, so this will be second time round now. And then the last 2 in fact are the same plant. We split it quite a while ago now. The tatty bit is going to somebody else when I get a chance to see them. This being the tatty bit. This was the back end of the plant that I don't normally plant. If I take the back end off of a plant, that normally goes in the bin. But because the flowers are so good on this, I thought, let's chuck it in a pot and see if it'll grow. And I don't normally, and the reason I didn't want to do it was this. This is an awful looking plant. This is, whoops, fans have just come on. Goody. Yeah, so it's, you know, it's going to be quite a few years before these become bulbs that are old enough to drop their leaves. Now, what it did do was not only start growing, but it produced 2 leads, one of which actually bloomed. But that lead has now gone dormant and has not progressed. The lead that went the other way produced a blind sheath, but has now produced another new growth with another sheath. The latest growths on here are reduced in size. The plant had no roots. It's had to produce a new root system, as well as trying to grow some growth. So that's quite a weak plant, but it will come on. These new growths will produce a better root system now, and then the next set of new growths will be up to full size. So that's off to somebody else, as I say, first chance I get. And then the last one over here is the front end of the plant, basically. So it's the same. So Cattleya angel hearts, it's the same plant, but this was the front end. So this was the bit with the better leaves. Well, they're still not brilliant, but they're a little bit better than the previous ones we saw. And this end has bloomed on every growth because these were the growths that I produced after I got the plant. So so this has progressed. Latest growth, not quite as big as the previous, but not substantially smaller, just a tiny little bit. But again, it got disturbed. You know, it got split. It lost its back end and had to produce some more roots because it had a reduced root system. So the latest two leaves on here are not, this one is not full size, this one's okay, and we do have a sheath that is highly likely to bloom. So yeah, that's coming on okay. And this, you know, this has the potential to be a nice looking Cattleya. So they're good substantial bulbs. It's quite an upright plant. Rhizomes are not too long, so it's not going to jump out of the pot quickly. It will take a while. And the fact that the back end of that plant grew so quickly and so well, after this has finished blooming and the next new growth with some roots, at whatever point the roots start growing, this one's going to get the rhizome cut because I think this will shoot out readily from the back end and get a second lead. But I don't want to do it now. I've only got 4 bulbs. You know, I need at least another actively growing one with some more roots. And then we might give that a slice and see if it will shoot out. There's a lovely dormant eye there. That would push. Anyway, so that's the Holey clay pots. Those are they. There's a few less. A couple have gone. That one that I struggled with for years and years that wouldn't grow, that eventually went. That was it, the Night of the Long Knives, saw pay to that along with some other stuff. I think there might be a Night of the Long Knives 2 coming up here because I'm just getting fed up with watering and looking at things like this. You know, that's a failed Latoria. It's been like that for ages. And, you know, that's years off becoming a nice plant again. So I think we might have a go at those and, you know, try and get... We've got one nice big substantial new one. So we've got one replacement. And as I see some more, we'll get some. But I think we might give up on the ones that just aren't growing. The one I probably will keep and give a chance, because I like it so much, is the Rhodostictum, which is not a good plant, but this has bloomed on quite a small plant several times. And it is trying to grow. There is a tiny little new growth there. So I might hang on to that one and just dump the rest. They're not doing well. And when I say dump the rest, it's not that many actually. There's 2 mounts there, and there's one hiding up there somewhere. Ah, that one. That can go as well. What is the point of keeping that? It's just not worth it. So there might be 2 or 3 of the older Latorias to go, hopefully to be replaced as and when I see some. One already done. So, well, that's not a replacement. It's half Rhodostictum and the blooms are similar. So, you know, but yeah, I will try and find some more. The one I'd really like is Green Elf, I think it's called. Latoria shaped blooms, but quite a good green with purple on. It's an unusual combination of colours. Anyway, that's all for today. Thanks for dropping by. And I think certainly over a period of time, I don't know how long, because I don't know how things are going to start progressing in here. But I'm having trouble. I can't film every day. There isn't something to film every day anymore. So as you've seen, like this week, one day was mucking about with the laptop and things. Yesterday I didn't film. There are days when I look and I think there's nothing to film today. It seems pointless just doing a video for the sake of it. But I will try and do ones like today a little more often, perhaps, where I pick a set of plants and we have a better look at them and see how they're progressing. Trying to avoid the project plants, obviously, because they haven't long been done, and they'll be done again at their appropriate time. So I have to try and avoid those. But apart from that, we could have a look round. And yeah, have a nice time. And carrying on from my little rant, sorry about that, be safe. But don't be silly, you know. You can be silly at both ends. You can shut yourself in a room with all the doors and windows shut. It's not necessary anymore. You can venture out with care, some flipping fresh air, even if you're only going to sit in the garden. But do some outside stuff. It does this the world of good to get out, see distance, see space. Four walls constantly don't do you a lot of good, I don't think. I mean, I spend quite a lot of time. I spend quite a few successive days sometimes and don't go outside the door. It doesn't worry me because I'm busy. But if I wasn't, it would worry me. And then I'd probably go out more. You know. Walk the dog. And if you haven't got one, get a stiff piece of rope with a collar on it and take a pretend one for a walk. You'll start up some conversations, trust me. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.